You're listening to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Luis Fernandez. The college football regular season is over, so this seems like a good time to check in on our local teams, how they're doing, and what they may be doing in the next couple of weeks. I don't know. We'll see. A lot to get to with all of that, so let's go ahead and talk with WRAL sports investigative reporter Brian Murphy. He joins us now. Brian, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, now that the regular seasons are done, this is always a good time to just look back at what we learned, all of the things that happened with these different teams. The climax of at least NC State and UNC's regular season was this weekend, the two teams facing each other, and NC State kind of doing what it's done for the past 5 years, winning handily under head coach Dave Doeren, who will be back for his 14th season. Let's start with the Wolfpack then. This doesn't really seem shocking that they beat UNC the way they do. But now that we know Dave Doeren's going to be back, what does all this mean for NC State?
Yeah, incredible longevity for Dave Doeren. 14 years is almost unheard of in today's college football, scene, given the way that coaches are being fired and hired all over the place. But, what was NC State really going to do? I mean, Dave Doeren, down the stretch, they beat Georgia Tech, which was unbeaten at the time. They beat Florida State. And they took care of business against North Carolina in kind of a result that most people expected. That team always plays hard for Dave Doeren. He's got incredible buy-in. He's built a culture there at NC State. 7-5, probably not what they expected, but a difficult schedule, especially down the stretch. They had to play Notre Dame and Miami. So this and Pittsburgh, a lot of teams that finished near the top of the ACC standings, and so I think when you look at what NC State could have done, they could have gotten rid of Dave Doeren. It was going to cost $12.5 million. Then you add in all the assistants. And it's not real clear that you could have found a better coach than Dave Doeren, someone who bleeds NC State red, who loves beating North Carolina and does it routinely now, and has built a culture that really sort of vibes with the school. I don't think they ever really wanted to make a change. I don't think he ever really wanted to leave, and so this is probably the best result for both teams. Dave will be back. They'll be opening the season in Brazil next year against Virginia. You look at the two teams in the ACC title game, Virginia, NC State beat in a non-conference game, and Duke, NC State probably should have won that game. There was an interception late in the first half that gets returned for a touchdown by Duke, kind of changed the whole tenor of that game. NC State thought Duke had jumped offside, thought they had a free play. That interception return for a touchdown ends up turning that whole game and probably turns both of their seasons in many ways.
So one more, question for NC State here. I mean, the expectations, I feel like in Raleigh are always so weird, where you can look at the beginning of the season, look at the talent on the roster and say, okay, you could see them doing something with this. It feels like they never kind of reach that pinnacle that they're looking for, like a 10-win season, but it also doesn't feel like they ever truly underperform in an incredibly awful way. So when we look ahead to NC State next year, you look at what is there on the roster. You mentioned the beginning of the season in Brazil against Virginia. What should be the expectations for NC State in Doeren's 14th season?
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the transfer portal. We can look at what NC State's roster or any of these teams' rosters look like right now. What does it look like in August? What does it look like at the end of the portal window in January? I mean, keeping C.J. Bailey, obviously job number one if you're NC State. If you're their collective, if you're the school, if you're revenue sharing, whatever, I think you want to keep C.J. Bailey as your quarterback. Obviously, backup quarterback Will Wilson showed that he can run the ball really well, really effectively. But I don't think you want to turn the offense over to him when you have a guy like C.J. Bailey. And then defensively, this team was ravaged by injuries. I mean, they were basically out of defensive backs at one point, playing third and fourth string linebackers. They had some problems along the offensive line. So maybe you're looking at some better health if you could keep that group healthy. Haven't done a deep dive into their schedule next year, but I think if you're NC State, you're hoping for that breakthrough season, that 10-win season that they has proven elusive under Dave Doeren, that maybe a trip to the conference championship game. You've seen Duke make it this year. You think if you're NC State or you're North Carolina, you're like, if Duke can make it, certainly we should be able to make it. Or Virginia made it, and NC State beat Virginia this year. So if you're NC State, I think you're just hoping to put one of those magical seasons together where you stay healthy, your quarterback stays healthy. Maybe a guy or two, breaks out, and you just have that season where things go your way in those close games, and you make it to Charlotte for the ACC championship game. I think that's the high end. That's the ceiling that this team just hasn't been able to reach. But on the other hand, as you mentioned, you change coaches and everything goes badly, and all of a sudden you're 3-9, and nobody wants that. So The bird in hand in this case I think is better. But if you're Dave Doran, I think you're still, to use one of his words, straining to get to that 10-win season, get to that ACC championship game.
Speaking of teams that recently underwent a coaching change, UNC, we have reached the end of Bill Belichick's first season in Chapel Hill. The Tar Heels finish 4-8. You can argue what should the expectations have been at the beginning of the season, but I think just about everyone can agree that this did not go according to plan. So what's next for UNC? Like, I wish I had a more specific question to ask, but what do the Tar Heels do now that they have gone through one full season with Bill Belichick?
Yeah, the season is mercifully over for Bill Belichick and North Carolina. I mean, there's a lot of work to do, and that's what Bill Belichick said after the game. He said, we have got a lot of work to do. That work is going to start on Wednesday. Wednesday is National Signing Day. Used to be a huge deal, right? We used to cover the heck out of it. Everybody did. But freshman signing has just, lessened in importance with the transfer portal. North Carolina plans to sign about 40 freshmen and junior college players on Wednesday. That's going to form the backbone of this program moving forward, and Carolina has better be right. They better be right on these guys, because 40 guys, I'm sure they're giving plenty of revenue sharing to them. That's a huge commitment. And then the question becomes, what does the rest of your roster look like? If you have these 40 freshmen, how many guys are you able to retain? Are you able to retain guys like Jordan Shipp and Melcart and Tyler Thompson, guys who have been really good performers for you this year? But the biggest question this team has is at the quarterback position. What do you do with offensive coordinator? What do you do with quarterback coach? What do you do with quarterback? Gio Lopez, a transfer from South Alabama, up and down all year, but never really up. I mean, never hit great heights. They had one of the worst offenses in the ACC, one of the worst offenses in college football. How does Bill Belichick get that fixed? Because if you can't score points in college football, you simply can't win. It's an offensive game. You have to be able to score. This team never scored more than 27 points against an FBS opponent. They lost to all 8 FBS opponents that they played that had more than 5 victories. I mean, they just weren't able to compete against the best teams on their schedule. And that schedule, by the way, gets a lot harder next year. They play Miami, they play Louisville, they play Notre Dame, they play both Virginia and Duke, who are going to the ACC championship game. They play TCU in Ireland. They play NC State, of course, to end the year. I mean, they go to UConn, which has proven to be a pretty good team recently. They beat Duke earlier this year up at UConn. So the schedule is much, much harder. One of the reasons for those high expectations this year was the schedule was so soft. It was a very soft schedule, and they went 4-8 against it. You look at next year's schedule, and if you have the same team, same caliber of team, you're looking at 1 or maybe 2 wins.
So maybe you answer this question here in what you just said, but if there's like one thing that you are looking for this offseason with UNC, like the one thing that you circled, they need to figure this out, it's that offensive side of the ball, would you say?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they have got to figure out quarterback and offensive coordinator and all that. I mean, it's just so important in college football. You can't win 10-7 games like you can in the NFL. You can't win 16, 14 games. The game's just not played that way. So bringing in some competition for Gio, figuring out what you got on the roster, figuring out who the offense coordinator is. Freddie Kitchens had that job this year. He has a 2-year contract. We'll see if he's back next year. And then the other thing that I'm really looking at is retention. It's one thing to add all these pieces to your team, but if you can't keep your best players, and we saw some of Carolina's best players leave the program in the offseason before this year, if you can't keep those guys, then you're constantly reshuffling. So can you keep the guys that you want to keep? And then I think what happens at offensive coordinator and quarterback is the key to the offseason.
So we've mentioned it a couple times here. Duke, ACC championship game. We're going to talk more about that and what this means for the Blue Devils as a whole right after this break. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Luis Fernandez, WRAL sports investigative reporter Brian Murphy, joining us now, and we are talking college football as the regular season has come to a close. Brian, at 7-5, the Duke Blue Devils are going to the ACC championship game. If you pay attention to college football at all, you saw this as a possibility, a very, this has to happen. This tiebreaker has to occur. This team has to lose. And everything worked out for Duke to go to Charlotte for the first time since, Cutcliffe was coaching this team. What a surprise and what a season for the Blue Devils. Just your thoughts on them playing Virginia in the ACC championship game.
Yeah, Coach Manny Diaz, last week when we said, well, here are all the things that need to happen, he said, we need this and this and this, and then we need the octopus to grab the right ball. Is how he described it. He said they weren't even paying attention to it. So they needed to win. They needed Miami to beat Pittsburgh, which seemed like a real possibility. Miami's probably the best team in the ACC. And then they needed SMU to lose. SMU ranked 25th in the country to go to California, a road game, and lose to a team that just fired their head coach. Cal had fired their coach the week leading up to this game after a dismal performance against Stanford. So Cal gets beat by Stanford, fires their coach, and then in order for Duke to make the title game, has to beat SMU, a number 25 team in the country, one of the better programs in the ACC. Well, Cal races out to a huge lead. SMU comes all the way back. Cal scores late to take the lead, and SMU misses a field goal on the final play of the game that would have won it for him. And lo and behold, Duke is in the ACC championship game. They tied with 5. So Virginia was 7-1. Which doesn't include a loss to NC State in a non-conference game. I mean, it's really
college
crazy.
Football is so wonderful.
It's wild how we got here. And Duke ends up in a 5-way tie for second place because these conferences are so big. Not everybody in that 5-way tie had played each other. In fact, Duke was 0-2 against other teams in that tie, which you would think would eliminate the Blue Devils, but it didn't. And you got all the way down to like the 5th tiebreaker, which was record of the winning percentage of conference opponents. And Duke had the best winning percentage of conference opponents among that group. And so they were going to the ACC title game. Manny Diaz said, we deserve it. Like, we won 6 games in the conference, and the teams that we played against had the highest winning percentage. We deserve to be there. But it is the worst case scenario for the ACC. And that is not a dig on Duke. Virginia's ranked 16th in the country. That's perfectly fine. Maybe they're 18th now. But Miami is sitting there, maybe one of the top 10 teams in the country, probably the best bet to go to the college football playoff. And they are not in this championship game. And instead, 5-loss Duke is.
Before we do the college football playoff thing, right? You say this is the worst case scenario for the ACC. For folks that may not be, all plugged into college football as folks like we are, why is this so bad for the ACC? With all respect to Duke, if you get it, you earn it, do it. You say we're coming here to crash the party, but why is this bad for the ACC?
Well, so there's a 12-team college football playoff, and it started last year, and this is a big misconception that the 5 highest-ranked conference champions get into the college football playoff. The 12 teams among the 12 spots, 5 are reserved for champions of their conference. Under normal circumstances, 4 of those bids are locked up. They go to the ACC champ, the SEC champ, the Big Ten champ, and the Big 12 champ. That's pretty much how everyone expects it to go. But those are not guaranteed. The ACC is not guaranteed one of those 5 spots. It goes to the 5 highest-ranked conference champions. And if Duke were to win the ACC, they would likely not be one of the 5 highest-ranked conference champions. So the American Conference champion is almost assuredly going to be ranked higher than the ACC champion.
If Tulane wins, Tulane is one of the teams that beat them, and they're number 24 currently in the college football playoff rankings.
Right, so I think the American champ is in. They're probably going to grab the 5th spot anyhow. They're in. And we did see this last year. The Mountain West, their conference champion, Boise State, was ranked ahead of the ACC champion too. But the problem becomes not one other conference, but 2 other conferences finishing ahead of the ACC champ. In this case, Duke, and James Madison, who's playing for the Sun Belt title, would be 12-1. Their only losses to Louisville, and they would possibly be ranked ahead of a 8-5 Duke ACC championship team, and that would mean that the ACC doesn't get anyone in the 12-team college football playoff. It's a real possibility. It's hard to put a percentage on it until we see what the college football rankings look like. But I mean, as we sit here today, I don't think there's any chance that Duke is ahead of James Madison.
So if you are someone who appreciates the ACC, I don't want to say an ACC fan because this isn't the SEC. We don't have a bunch of SEC fans and stuff like that. But if you're someone who appreciates the ACC, when the second to last rankings come out this week, what do you need to see to feel okay that an ACC team will be represented in the playoff?
There's almost nothing you can see in there because Duke's not going to be in the top 25. And they have 5 losses. And even though Manny can say, hey, we've lost to 10-win teams and 9-win teams and 8-win teams.
You still lost.
Yeah, 5 losses not going to get you in the top 25. But if James Madison is in that top 25 and they win, they're clearly not going to fall out of the top 25. I mean, Virginia needs to win this game. If you're the ACC, and I've written about this previously, the financial and reputational harm to the ACC that would come with getting left out of the 12-team playoff completely, it would be significant. So if you're the ACC, Virginia winning would be your best bet. Your second best bet may be Miami gets an at-large bid. Even if Duke wins, Miami somehow finds a way to get an at-large bid, and that's your representative in the 12-team college football playoff. And so you have Miami as an at-large with the two, non-Power 4 conferences represented. And so that may be the best-case scenario for the ACC, is that Miami finds a way to get in. But if the best-case scenario is Virginia wins, they get in as your champion, and then Miami finds a way to get in as an at-large. Then you would have two teams like you had last year with Clemson and SMU. That's worth a lot more money. I mean, the difference between getting two teams in, getting one team in, or getting zero teams in is we're talking millions and millions of dollars. And, this raises a larger point. Like we saw the Mountain West had to go to computer tiebreakers to determine which of their four teams would even make their conference championship game. As these leagues get bigger and bigger, the ACC has 17 football playing members. The Big Ten has 18, which is how you get two undefeated teams playing each other in the Big Ten championship game. They don't play each other in the regular season. Gone are the days of the round robin. And so how do you determine, when teams play vastly different conference schedules, how do you determine who gets to go to your championship game? The ACC doesn't have anything in its tiebreakers about college football championship or college football playoff rankings. And they may have to change that moving forward, because you clearly want to put your best teams forward. And Miami was part of that five-way tie for second.
Now, but if you're Duke, I mean, do you care? Are you just like, listen, we got to go win an ACC title? I mean, imagine if you're Duke, that's what you're thinking.
Yeah, if you're Duke, you're making no apologies. Look, this was the system. It was put in place in 2023, this tiebreak system. We've played under it in 23 and 24 and 25. And look, it just happened to benefit us. We're not apologizing for it at all. We're going to go try to beat Virginia. And if we beat Virginia, Manny Diaz said, on Sunday that we absolutely deserve to be in the college football playoff. His point was that teams like Duke would stop scheduling teams like UConn or Tulane and just schedule home wins and try to buff up their schedule, their ranking. So they would be, if they hadn't played those games, but they'd played
the Tulane, the UConn, then this is less of a conversation at that point if those are two easy wins.
Right, two easy wins. All of a sudden they have 9 wins and nobody's talking about leaving Duke out. And so he said it would be a real problem for scheduling. He also made a point, and look, this is really in the weeds, so if you've stuck with us, we appreciate it. The 12-team college football playoff, the Big Ten has already said we need to expand that. We need to expand it to 16 or 20 or 24. And the Big Ten, one of the reasons they want to do that is they want to have play-in games, so that they could play their 1 versus 2 in the championship game, but 3 plays 6 and 4 plays 5, and the winners of those games also get automatic berths into a bigger playoff. And Manny Diaz says he was opposed to that, but after this season, he thinks that's the only way to solve this problem, because if you have these large conferences, and how do you untie all these tiebreakers? Well, if you get to play it off and play for berths in an expanded college football playoff, that would be one way. If that was the case, Virginia would be playing Duke for the conference championship, or maybe it would be Miami against Virginia for the conference championship. But Duke would be involved in that 3-6 game or that 4-5 game, and they would have a chance to play their way into the college football playoff. No selection committee needed. Automatic berths for, several automatic berths for each of the big conferences. And so college football has a lot of problems. I think, the calendar is one of them. But these giant conferences leading to these naughty tiebreakers and ending up with not your two best teams in the conference championship game is certainly another one.
College football. Nothing like it. Nothing like it. That's WRAL Sports Investigative reporter Brian Murphy. Brian, thank you so much. I'm Luis Fernandez. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.